Okay, so now we're going to have a look at tragicomedy. Tragicomedy was very prominent during Renaissance times, so that's Shakespeare times, around Shakespeare times, and in modern times, so more specifically the past 100 years or so. So a key thing or the key dynamic of the Renaissance tragicomedy is that it has a bittersweet plot plus a happy ending. And with bittersweet, I'm referring to that the story has elements of tragedy and elements of comedy together in that same story with a happy ending. So another key thing of the classic tragic comedy is that it uses the same kind of protagonist as tragedy. So it uses people of noble or high social rank. In addition, another key thing of tragic comedy is that there is natural laws are active. So please do remember that in comedy, there is a suspension of natural laws. There is a suspension of logic. This is not so in tragic comedies. So in tragic comedies, whatever the character's actions are, these actions will have real consequences or consequences closer to the reality that we live in. So another thing about the Renaissance tragic comedy is Shakespeare problem plays. So in the past, critics of the past, they didn't fully understand how to categorize some of Shakespeare plays. So because they saw in this plays that it had elements of comedy and elements of tragedy in the same story. So they didn't know what to do. So they classified them as problem plays. Now we tend to classify them as tragic comedy because we understand better. So for instance, if we think of The Merchant of Venice, in that play we have a sense that especially in the first half of the play, we have a sense that the play is a comedy or that it has a very light-hearted plot. But by the second half, we start getting a strange feeling that things are getting too serious. In that particular play, the antagonist is asking for a pound of flesh to one of the other characters. And in this second half, it turns out that this antagonist can legally ask for a pound of flesh, and he actually asks for the heart of this other character. So in the end, it ends well. And in this particular play, Shakespeare was highlighting the nonsense of some laws. Nonetheless, talking about that tragic comic feeling, so we started feeling something light, something that probably will end well, but then because of the serious consequences to the character's actions, and we start feeling some of the tragic elements, so we start feeling the seriousness of it. Then if we refer to modern plays, here we usually have a lighthearted plot plus a sad ending. And this type of plays, or the playwriters of modern tragic comedies, what they're looking for is to show that life is two sides of the same coin, that life is tragic and pathetic, but it can also be comic or comical or ridiculous. Okay, so then I have an anecdote with about Chekhov, Anton Chekhov, the writer, the playwriter. So when Anton Chekhov wrote his famous play The Seagull, he described it as a comedy. But then, when the play was produced by the famous director of the time, Konstantin Stanislavski, Stanislavski mentioned that the play was actually a tragedy, a drama. So you can already tell in those times that they didn't know how to basically describe what was going on. So, but nowadays we tend to categorize that play as a tragic comedy. So it gives you a very lighthearted plot, And in the end, so some bad things happen in the end, and it leaves you with a feeling that a sort of feeling of being lonely, of the life being hopeless. So another example would be Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett. So this is a very famous play. So this play belongs to the genre theater of the absurd, which can be classified as a subgenre of tragicomedy because of the elements I've been mentioning. So in this play, we have the heroes, Vladimir and Estragon, and they're waiting for Godot, who never arrives. So a lot of funny and ridiculous things happen, and they interact with even more ridiculous characters. But actually nothing happens. So they're there waiting for Godot, chatting with other characters that pass by, and by the end, with the audience and the characters as well, we get the feeling that Godot will actually never arrive. In the case of the characters, they start saying that they probably never met Godot and that probably Godot will never arrive, but they stay there waiting for him. So we start feeling that sense of abandonment, of how ridiculous life can be, and probably in a more deeper level, Beckett was trying to show us or to reflect back at us that sometimes we wait for things that will never happen, or we're waiting for something to happen in order to make something else happen. So and that sometimes may not be so. So okay,